pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if you'll be seated. Okay, we're going to have public comment now. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per participant for a total of 30 minutes for the evening. First on the list, Deborah Hudson. Deborah Hudson.
She couldn't be here, she had car trouble.
Thank you. Mark Kilburn.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. Last board meeting, there was discussion about whether the board should be directly involved in the selection process of the books. There's library director commented something to the effect that the library board never done that before. It'd be out of line with their duties as a board. The board would be overriding the professional librarian, what they've decided. So I'd say 2 things about that. One is that they do have the authority under section 4-936. The board trustees employs the chief librarian who's responsible to them, and they can acquire books and library materials. So they have the authority to acquire it, and the director is responsible to them. Also, there's a comment made that there's about 1,000 new books a month coming in on the shelves, and so I'm wondering how many are coming off the shelves, and who decides that, and is that censorship? The board doesn't have to review every book that's coming in, but they should be provided a list so they're aware of the categories that these new titles are, and they can question them if they want to. And something else not to lose sight of in all of this stuff that we're talking about, I think, is I have daughters, I have nieces. There's been there's convincing arguments that, social media is probably causing the biggest problems that we're having in the younger generation, but libraries are part of the problem and they have to act responsibly. And who suffers the most from all this stuff? It's teenage girls. These books that are challenged contain vulgar and sexually confusing content, and it's aimed at teenagers. And how confused are they? The number of teens diagnosed with clinical depression was up 37% between 2005 and 2014. Teenage girls experience depression at 3 times the rate of boys. The average rate of self-harm is up 62% since 2009, and that's all among teenage girls. Preteen girls, 10 to 14, their rates of self-harm are up 189% since 2010, and that's triple what they were 6 years prior. So you can't turn a blind eye to this and say that only part of the community is bringing this up. Never mind the fact that there were 4,000 signatures that went to the governor on this topic. It's just irresponsible. The board needs to consider this context, as they develop their policies to address their issues in the selection of materials and the reconsideration. Thank you.
Reba Cruz.
Good evening, and thank you for serving as trustees. My name is Reba Cruz, and I'm a Pickens County resident and a parent of 2 teenagers. And I ask you to reject the continued attacks to dictate what I and my children may read and the programs we may enjoy. There's also a larger issue I'm here to address. Now, we've witnessed the conflict that occurs on the back end of a censorship campaign to remove and restrict access to public materials and programs. The First Amendment reveals itself to be deeply conflicted. The 5 freedoms are fighting each other, and that they always have in America. The First Amendment is not a collection development rubric. It's a retention rubric. The courts judge whether a book is obscene, not faction groups or activist board members. There is an inherent flaw in trying to define identities, people, and populations as somehow or another criminal or obscene. And so I move to shift the framework. We need to have a different conversation about the front end of the collection development process. Why was the book put on the shelf in the first place? And everyone has dignity and protection under the law, even if they are not part of the majority. There is equal protection, 14th Amendment protection for the marginalized groups targeted in this censorship campaign. Everyone has the right to have their stories told. This is where the Civil Rights Act of 1964 enters the chat. The rights of people who are in a protected class under civil and human rights statutes do not end at the library door. Librarians work to protect protected classes. Now, we live in a society where civil rights have been in place as a core component of federal and state laws since the 1960s. If we have books that are relevant to a protected class based on race or national origin, on gender or sexual identity or religion, then we have good justification to put them in our collections and a stronger justification not to remove, restrict, or segregate them. And this body has the obligation to reject performative, politicized book challenges seeking to define human beings as obscene when in fact they are protected. It's not just the First Amendment as a principle being most impinged. These are people who require dignity and safety in our community. Public libraries are not just a limited public forum under the First Amendment, but a place of public accommodation under civil rights law. Our Black, queer, and trans neighbors have a right to be represented on library shelves. So please consider this as you fortify library policy to withstand this assault. And thank you for listening.
Carol Lawson.
I want to thank the Library Board for your dedication and attentiveness to the issues and concerns of the community. I'm going to read an excerpt from the American Library Association Bill of Rights, Libraries, and American Value that was adopted in 1999 by the Council of the ALA. Libraries in America are cornerstones of the communities they serve. Free access to the books, ideas, resources, and information in America's libraries is imperative for education, employment, enjoyment, and self-government. Libraries are a legacy of each generation, offering the heritage of the past and the promise of the future. To ensure that libraries flourish and have the freedom to promote and protect the public good in the 21st century, we believe certain principles must be guaranteed. To that end, we affirm this contract with the people we serve. We defend the constitutional rights of all individuals, including children and teenagers, to use the library's resources and services. We value our nation's diversity and strive to reflect that diversity by providing a full spectrum of resources and services to the communities we serve. We affirm the responsibility and the right of all parents and guardians to guide their own children's use of the library and its resources and services. We connect people and ideas by helping each person select from and effectively use the library's resources. We protect each individual's privacy and confidentiality in the use of library resources and services. We protect the rights of individuals to express their opinions about library resources and services. We celebrate and preserve our democratic society by making available the widest possible range of viewpoints, opinions, and ideas so that all individuals have the opportunity to become lifelong learners and formed literate, educated, and culturally enriched. Change is constant, but these principles transcend change and endure in a dynamic technological, social, and political environment. By embracing these principles, libraries in the United States can contribute to a future that values and protects freedom of speech in a world that celebrates both our similarities and our differences, respects individuals and their beliefs, and holds all persons truly equal and free. This was clearly added to help prepare us for the 21st century. The Bill of Rights and the Freedom to Read guidelines should be followed. All that is present and the community need to read or reread them again. The focus that we should be having for our library is on renovations and the future vision of our public libraries. Construction costs continue to rise, and I don't see them coming down. I also would like to thank the Sarlin Library librarian who called the director to get approval for 2 parents with no children present to attend the read program.
That's time's up. Thank you. That's okay. Tom Geister.
Thank you for hearing me. I have paid taxes to the state of South Carolina since 1993, and we have lived here the last 11 years, and it's a great place to live. But I'll tell you right off the bat, I am against any purchase, display, or promotion of prurient materials in our public libraries. It shouldn't be there. That's it. We pay the taxes. We own that library. We sustain it. And the people that are in charge of boards and counties listen to us, okay? Now, you may not like that attitude, but we're up to here with this stuff. We've been dithering about this subject for months. It's, you know something, we don't improve the lives of our children by having this material in front of them. I'll tell you what, I graduated, hate to tell you, in 1962. I got something here. This is written by teachers. Reading list for college-bound high school students, okay? These are suggested books they should read. First one, Holy Bible. Whoa. Don Quixote, Robinson Crusoe, David Copperfield, Scarlet Letter, Gulliver's Travels, Red Badge of Courage, Tale of Two Cities, Federalist Papers, Call of the Wild, and on and on. Now, they're probably in the library. These books, in my opinion, should be promoted to increase the children's learning experience. When I went to school, the U.S. ranked 5th in the world for the educational system. You know where we rank now? 30th. And don't tell me this kind of stuff is going to improve our standing. It won't do it. I was also one that went down with Janelle down to Columbia. We met face to face with Governor McMaster. He gave us 30 minutes. He listened. When we gave him that book, that 3-ring binder with 4,000 signatures that we gathered, the people they didn't know what was going on in our county. And they signed it. We don't want this. We don't want this. The people generally don't want it. The people that need that material, they can get it. Don't tell me they can't get that stuff. They can get it on the internet if they want. So we're not denying anybody for that material, but not in a public library. Thank you.
Michael Nelson Jr.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to these very often emotional arguments. I've already addressed this board in regard to my experience with some of the graphically sexual material that is seen in some of these books that we've requested to be taken off the shelves. And I've highlighted how my experience with media like this has led to compulsive dopamine-seeking behaviors, which is why I believe that children should be shielded from this access, not that the books should be banned, as some have mistaken. I listened to the media, the shows, the music, the influencers. I partied, I womanized as much as I could, and it was all for nothing. You will not find lasting happiness in pleasure-seeking hedonism, and I think that's a message that is not being transmitted to children. The vast majority of counter-arguments that I have heard in our concern in this inappropriate material being available to children as young as 7 years old, by the way, involves ad hominem attacks such as book burners, banners, homophobes, fascists. Yet any time that we who are against this graphically sexual content that shows up in our libraries question the motives of those aiding or abetting this addictive material to minors, we are accused of slander and libel. Sounds like rules for thee and not for me. This discussion will not be productive as long as we resort to ad hominem attacks, and I mean that for both sides. The fact is, a lot of these materials, especially the ones that are more pornographic, are addictive and form dangerous habits for the youth, and I can attest personally to that. Thank you for listening.
Juliet Penna, excuse me, Penna.
Thank you, members of the board, for your support for the library system and its clients. My name is Juliet Penna, and I live and work and pay taxes in the county. I will comment on topics raised by you guys on shaping the reconsideration policy, which were made at last month's Committee of the Whole meeting. Order of reconsiderations. Ms. Pinkerton rightly noted that there should not be a limit on the number of challenges and that every challenge needs to be treated equitably. There needs to be a method that recognizes some people are challenging numerous books at one time and that they do not deserve to have more of the library resources, librarian and board member time just because they have more books on challenge. So that a person with one challenge is not stuck in chronological order behind someone who has submitted 20 challenges. This is just the potluck rule that we tell our kids. No one gets seconds until everyone has had firsts. Reconsideration of books that the board has ruled on already. Again, I think Ms. Pinkerton had a good point about the perspectives of books changing over the tenure of the board members. For that reason, the time frame after a board decision should be 3 years before reconsideration re-eligibility. I think 3 years is both the term of a trustee and the time in which a book would be naturally weeded out in circulation process. This prevents the same books from repeatedly ending up on the reconsideration list, which we've all agreed is a drain on library and board member time. Who can submit reconsiderations? Reconsideration should be accepted from people who have library cards in good standing. This is a low bar, but it ensures the challenges are coming from stakeholders in the system itself. It's fair that the people who are actually eligible and active in using this resource be the ones shaping it. This also addresses both the need for transparency about who is challenging the books and maintaining the privacy in the requests. Certification of reading the book in its entirety. I was glad that everybody sort of agreed on this one. Although the honor system is only as strong as the people who abide by it, people who ignore morality to use the ends to justify the means will eventually reap what they sow anyway. I appreciate the library staff in creating and maintaining the reconsideration request list on the website. This was swiftly implemented when asked for, and it creates transparency and accountability. I do appreciate that. And I thank you, each of you, for your time and your diligence and your integrity in serving our outstanding library system and its entire clientele.
Josh Malkin.
Good evening. My name is Josh Malkin. I'm a lawyer with and advocacy director for the American Civil Liberties Union of South Carolina. The ACLU is committed to defending South Carolinians' constitutional rights. Before we get to the topic at hand, I want to thank the board members for heeding the call to public service and the board director and all county librarians for all you do to serve the community. I also want to applaud the level of passion and involvement in the room tonight. A community is best served by such local investment. I marvel at what the group in this room could accomplish if everyone diverted half of their attention to another issue. For example, according to the data from the South Carolina Committee on Children, there were 2,679 homeless students in Pickens during the 2022-2023 school year. That's the most in the state. In contrast, there were 1,600 in Greenville and just over 400 in Charleston. This certainly seems like an issue more deserving of everyone's time and passion. Now, I want to discuss two distinct legal issues brought to mind when I hear folks who want to move or remove books. First, moving or removing books simply because they have gay characters or feature gay relationships is viewpoint-based discrimination that is clearly in violation of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Second, folks often say that material should be removed from the library because it is, quote, obscene. They say this because obscene speech does not garner First Amendment protections. However, it is extremely unlikely that any court would determine the Pickens County library system to have obscene material. In order to be considered obscene under Section 1615-305 of the South Carolina Code, a book needs to, quote, have no literary, political, artistic, or scientific value. This is an extremely high legal bar to meet. The reality is that people use the word obscenity objectively. They label books obscene they personally find inappropriate. But what happens if we take this thinking to the next logical step? What if someone said that any book that featured premarital sex was obscene? Plenty of folks believe that sex should only happen within a marriage. What about someone who thought hugging was obscene? Now, at this point, you might be saying, Josh, you're being ridiculous. No one thinks hugging is obscene. However, last year in Spartanburg, a woman told county council that she thought the word penis was obscene and should not appear in any book in the public libraries. That may seem absurd to many of you, but why is her opinion of appropriateness any less valid than anyone else's? A library system simply cannot operate if it has to cater to every individual's individual perception of appropriateness. Public libraries are one of the greatest emblems of American freedom.
That's time. Thank you. Denise Davidson.
On the agenda tonight, under new business, there's the compliance requirement from the state library to be signed. So I'm presenting a request to the board members and to Ms. Howard that, and my memo reads, how do current guidelines for minors in the library comply with the recent provisos signed by law, in the law by the governor? So I would like to have a response from that, please. I have had a response from several board members, and I appreciate that. Others have chosen not to. I'd like to applaud the young man who came up and spoke about his own experience, and sadly, if that's not enough reason to implement the guidelines in the proviso, then I don't know what else. I don't know what else is going to move the board. As I've attended these meetings over the last several months, there has been no request to prevent free speech. There's been no segregation of, well, I'm not going to say segregation, there's been no censorship. The only thing that has been requested is that these books, and now as it has been outlined in the proviso signed by the governor, is that these books are separated into an area where parents, if parents choose to allow their children to see pornographic sexual acts between adults, then that's certainly up to their parents. And I know that apparently there's some people in this room that's fine with them, and that's their right. But this is a taxpayer-funded institution, and now the governor has signed a proviso. And I'm just asking how your current policy that was presented last month is in line with that proviso, and I would like to have an answer. Thank you.
That ends public comment for this evening. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask all board members to silence their cellular devices and put them away off of the table, please, during the meeting. This is so that we can give our full attention to the business at hand We are the people that have been selected to sit on this board, and we should give it respect it by giving our attention and not, yes.
Mine is resources of what I have in my document, my agenda, anything that Stephanie sends. I don't have some printed copies here, but I make notes. And this is just like a laptop, computer. This is what I use. So
Okay.
when you see me on the phone, I'm not texting people,
It's perception. You know, perception that people aren't paying attention. That's what I've heard recently.
I will not comply with that.
Okay, that's your right. That's your right. Okay, approval of minutes. The library board meeting on 6/20. Did everybody have a chance to read the minutes? Got a motion to approve? Second? Second. All those in favor? Is that a no, Elisa? You don't approve the minutes?
Oh, for June?
Yes.
Yeah, I approve, can I make a comment on it? Or, yeah. I'll do that. My question is, like, can we, for the voting, instead of just vote pass, can it be for, on the record of 5-3, or 4-3, whatever, how it voted?
That's what we do, right?
It just says voting passed.
Okay.
Is that possible to do that?
That's
Just
fine.
for on record?
Now that things are recorded, it's a lot easier. I used to just record the everybody's saying their voice, and everybody would talk over each other, so it was really hard to, but now with the recording, that's easier.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so is everyone, all those in favor of approving June minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, July 18th, library board meeting. Do you have a motion to approve?
I have another question.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. The last thing I want to clarify with you, it says that you gave us an email of the proviso beforehand. The only email I got was the press release one. I did not get the one that you had, that I had on here in paper form. I did not get that in the email. I just got the press release from you.
I'm not sure what, the email was the press release.
I thought this, which was at the last meeting with all this information on it, was said that it was emailed to us.
Yeah.
And all I got was just the press release. I did not get any attachment other than that.
Okay.
So I just want to make it clear that I didn't get that information, so that's why I stated that, because in the minutes it says that you emailed it ahead of time and that we had it, and that's why I asked about this at the end of the last time meeting, because I didn't,
Okay.
this is the first
You'd
time
like
I saw
for
it was
to
when
say
we
that
sat here.
you received the memo?
Just
and
the
not
press
email.
release, that's
Press
all I got.
release.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected then?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Nancy, are you not?
I wasn't here, so I'm not going to.
Okay. Nancy abstained. The library director's report?
I just wanted to remind everybody that we will once again have early voting for the November general election. People have started calling and asking already about that. So we will have absentee early voting at the libraries. They'll only be at the Easley and Central Clemson locations. As usual, Easley and Central are the early voting sites, but only Central is a polling location. So you cannot come to vote on election day at the Easley Library, but you can absentee early vote. Those dates will be October 21st through October 26th and October 28th through November 2nd. September is also library card sign-up month, so we're working on promotional materials to let the community know about all the great free things that they can do with their library card. We are also working on another Adventure Pass partner, which, if you're aware, there are passes to state libraries, Children's Museum, Western North Carolina Nature Center, all that. So we're working on another one of those to introduce library card sign-up month. The library completion project, we're continuing to work with the county's project manager to get this project on track. We're working toward the goal of beginning renovation in January. And as we move through the RFQ process and get some of the timelines in place, we will need to start scheduling more committee meetings concerning that project. Also, I had one more thing that wasn't on the copy that you have. The Sutherland Library and Liberty partnered with BRIEF, which is a nonprofit, the Blue Ridge Innovation Entrepreneurship Foundation, this summer for a 4-day STEM summer camp for ages 6 through 12. We have 40 spots, and they filled up immediately for those 4 days during the summer. Students learned about and created a robot using hands-on Lego robotics. And we're excited to announce that BRIEF, in partnership with the Sutherland Library and Liberty, has received a $7,500 grant from the Duke Energy Foundation to create a permanent ongoing program that will be based in the Liberty area. The programs will begin this fall, with more details to follow as we figure those things out. Beth Buchanan, who is the branch manager at the Sutherland Library and Liberty, has been working with them to expand this program, and they've done an amazing job, and it's our hope that and goal that we can continue to partner with them to help that program grow, because it's a really great program, and it was very popular this summer.
And tell Beth, that is awesome, because I know from Mr. Costner that Liberty School area is a very poor school area, and the library and the STEM program may be the only option that some of these students have to be introduced to this type of program. So kudos to Beth and the other Sutherland Library staff.
And now Cassie's going to talk a little bit about summer reading statistics.
Okay.
So summer reading just ended at the end of July, and it was another successful year. You have 2 sheets of statistics. The first one is participation in summer reading. That's the summer reading logs that people have returned. And the second one is attendance at our summer reading performances. So you can look at that. And it also includes over the years, so you can see how things have changed. The biggest thing is we're pretty much now back to pre-COVID numbers, which is amazing. It took us a while to get back there. This is only the 3rd year that we've had in-person programming again since COVID, so we're excited that it was another increase this year. Just some highlights. Overall, for summer reading, we had 194 programs with 8,364 people in attendance. And we did 27 outreach programs, and at those we had 3,161 attendees. We had a 25% increase in attendance at our summer reading performances. Almost the same amount increased in participation. And we had a really good year with adult participation in summer reading. We had a 50% increase in adult participation at the Central Clemson branch, and over 100% increase in adult participation at the Pickens and Liberty branches. And then we also had a really good increase in participation in the tween and teen population just across all the libraries.
Did you want to talk about the capacity?
Oh, yes. Anytime on this sheet, on the performer sheet at Easley, if you see 178, that is capacity, and we turned people away from those performances. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at that. I know for the Critter Keeper that morning, we turned over 100 people away for that morning show. We did. I think, I didn't bring them with me. I had them and I forgot them, but I think we turned away between 300 and 400 people total across the summer.
Well, I know I said this at the last board meeting, but I wanted to reiterate it again. Kudos to the summer program. It was so much fun. I got to take my grandchildren to some of the ones, and everybody was happy, everybody was excited. It was nice to be part of it, and I didn't have to say, have y'all read your books yet? Because they were into crumble cookies and all. So kudos to everything that went went into it.
And the reason you had to turn people away, was that simply due to space?
Yes, that's we have the performances typically in this room here, and that's the capacity of the room.
For
So-
two shows.
And if we were to have it upstairs, if there was air conditioning, then we could
Yeah,
have.
so we did have the evening performance for Critter Keeper upstairs, and we had 314 people. We had it just in the reference area, and it was packed.
Was
So-
not ideal,
Yeah.
but we didn't have to turn anybody away.
Right.
for that.
Okay, thank you.
Would the renovations help
Yes.
mitigate that? If we can get those done?
Yes.
That's a good reason to press on. With that number of people turned away.
What were the total ones turned away? Is it on here, or did you
It's
just-
not, it was between 300 and 400, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, the finance report?
So I've given y'all the FY *24 year end, and then the report, the FY '25 August report. And I did point out in your email when I sent this out, it's a little bit confusing right now, the year end, because we're still working in FY '24. So these are the numbers as I had them, but I know because I've been doing the bookkeeping that I'm still in FY '24 and FY '25. So they're going to close that out this month, I believe, and then we'll have a better understanding of the FY '25 report and the year-end report. I also think I pointed out in the email that the building renovation fund has not been moved over yet because FY '24 has not been closed out yet. But when that is closed out, it will move over.
I noticed that the AC is still not working upstairs. Did they not get the part?
We found a part in Spartanburg, so we're still patching our HVAC units together because they're so old that you can't find parts anymore.
Right, I know that feeling.
So Stephanie, were any of the surpluses surprising? I know that the salaries and wages and the related expenses were anticipated as a surplus. Anything else that sticks out?
Not right now. I may have more to report on that after it really closes out, because
Okay.
I'm still processing book invoices and all kinds of stuff for FY '24. So when we really get that closed out, I'd like to look at it again and see what the true numbers were.
Okay, thank you.
Have we heard any more about further with the council on, did you get your architecture, whatever, for the renovations?
I think our project manager's working on the RFQs right now.
Okay, the foundation report.
So you'll have multiple months of the foundation report, but I did want to point out in the July report that the money that was pledged by Ms. William, there was $10,000 that she had already donated. And then in her will, there was another $30,000. That money is now in the foundation's bank account.
Looks like it's growing and it's flush.
Yeah.
Did we ever figure out for the foundation committee what we need to do? We were supposed to be getting together, right?
Do we need a separate board is the question?
No, the library board is the foundation board. I think we were looking at a foundation committee to start thinking about ideas.
The
Yeah,
language was confusing in the bylaws about having a separate foundation board. So I was unsure how to proceed.
So we're able to have a fundraising committee?
Yeah, a foundation committee.
The foundation committee, I think, to fundraise.
Then you can discuss fundraising or projects or whatever you want to.
So the issue was, when I read through the bylaws, it really did talk about a foundation.
Yeah.
A board of directors
Right, yeah.
with a chair and a secretary and somebody, a representative from county council, so that.
I think a long time ago, that was the case,
Okay.
like when this building was being built, but afterwards, it pretty much became the board of trustees.
Okay, so that's not valid
We may need
language
to
anymore?
clarify that. No, as far as I've understood it since I've been here, that was given over to the Board of
Okay.
Trustees.
So the bylaws that were in my packet still have that, so
Okay.
that's why I wasn't sure how to proceed on that. I didn't want to do anything without getting clarification.
We can definitely look at the bylaws and, because there are a couple other things that we need to address in the
Yes.
bylaws, so,
Okay.
and get that clarified
Okay,
on there.
because we'd like to get started on that.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay. New business, the state aid documents to be signed by the chair in front of the quorum. This is the state aid. You want to talk about that?
Yes, that's just a document that shows our percentages. There is an ideal percentage of what is spent on staff and what is spent on books. Because that law and that statute is pretty old, nobody ever really meets it anymore, so we always get a letter. We've been close, but it's almost impossible to meet it since the law's like 50 years old. So the state librarian gives us a pass on that. So it just needs to be signed so that we can get our state aid. That is one of the documents that needs to be signed.
Is there a
Do we
way?
know what the state aid will be yet?
Yes.
It's on that sheet.
Is it on there? It will be $329,000, $329,445. So it did go up.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is it possible, I keep hearing that these policies are outdated or they're old and we need, is there a possible way for you to maybe make a list of things that maybe we need to look at to update some of this stuff?
This is
so we
not
don't-
a library policy, this is a state
It's
policy.
a state law.
Yeah, it's a law.
We have no control over this.
Yeah, but I mean, you just said that it was old though and they
Yes.
never.
It's
questioned-
old legislation that they haven't opened up yet, so the state library has created a way for the public libraries to comply.
Instead of change it or update
Yeah.
it.
They would
make it
have to open
compliant?
up the legislation,
Okay.
and I don't think they're gonna do
Okay.
that.
Okay, and the other one is the proviso.
And you may want to read that out, just because there was some,
Okay.
to know that we do comply.
Okay, in order for a South Carolina Public Library to receive designated aid to county library funds, South Carolina Code of Laws 60-1-80, South Carolina Code of Laws 60-1-90, South Carolina Code Regs, Volume 26, Chapter 75-1 and 2, they must certify to having a collection development policy which has been approved by the local public library board. This certification indicates that professional standards have been followed when selecting and organizing materials in the collection. The public library must also make available a request for consideration form, which includes reconsideration of the location of books and materials in the library. The public library must also ensure they have a policy approved by the local public library board, which clearly identifies the age at which a child can obtain a library card without parental consent. This certification indicates that the above-named county is compliant with state regulations regarding library funding.
And we clearly do all three.
Even though we're in the works of changing some of these policies or trying to, does that matter?
But we have a policy. Policies are ever-changing and evolving, so we do have a policy set in place. So we are complying with that. If we change it, that can only be better for us. We do have the reconsideration forms. We have the age is 18 when they can get a library card on their own.
And this, we're signing based on the policies we have as of right now, so not
Correct.
what we might change in the future.
Right. But as they say about other policies within the county, it's a living document. Okay. Item number 8. Wait, what am I on? I'm C, I'm sorry. Is the adoption of a trustee's code of ethics into the library bylaws. As library board, I'm going to read a little statement here that I have. As library board of trustees and officials that are tasked with making policy decisions important to the people of Pickens County, it is suggested in our South Carolina State Library Trustees Manual that we adopt a trustees code of ethics. These standards and ethics govern our professional conduct as a body and should be adhered to. Considering 2 recent incidents involving board members, it is important for the library board to adopt the trustees code of ethics as part of our library board or trustees bylaws. An incident report was filed by staff on Wednesday, July 24th, about the conduct of library board member Nancy Miller and Easley City Council Representative Denise Davidson concerning their behavior towards staff at the Sardin Library Branch in Liberty related to a teen program called Weeaboo Wednesday. Additionally, a report was made by a staff member on Friday, July 26th, concerning library board member Danny Parton seeking to conduct off-the-record meetings with staff. This type of behavior is unethical and unprofessional and should not continue under any circumstances. Let the adoption of this trustees code of ethics serve as a guide for the library board's conduct going forward. And you all have the trustees code of ethics here. It was in our state book to begin with, but now we're putting it in our policy book as part of our policy.
Can I ask a question? What exactly was wrong with us going to observe the video at the library in Liberty?
It is the way it was done. First, you didn't introduce yourself as a board member. You went as a parent, and no adults that don't have teens are allowed to go into a teen program.
That's why she called and got permission, and I never said I was a parent, and I told her I was a board member.
After the fact.
No, at the very beginning.
When Denise Davidson said.
So it's basically her word against my word.
Well, when Denise Davidson said, you're not going to allow a board member access, that's when she knew you were a board member. If you have a question about the programs, it's our responsibility to go to Stephanie and talk to Stephanie about the program, not to go to staff and make them uncomfortable and with your opinions of the programs that they're hosting.
What was the date that I approached her?
Well, I don't know the date that you did, but on July 26th was the date that the report was made.
Is that the only one? Is that the only one?
Well, the one that somebody reported, did you do more than that weren't reported?
Oh, I declared, what is it, the 5th on that? No. I approached Pickens Library, the manager, and I talked with her concerning things in the library, how's it going, anything, and I know we're not to go in if there's a complaint or whatever, or she talks to us without Stephanie. I understand that, but I just want her, I do communicate with her at Pickens Library.
And did you ask her to be off the record?
Yeah.
See, to me, right then and there, when you say off the record, you're undermining her boss's authority by saying off the record.
To
you? Me, that's anybody who's in charge.
Aren't you supposed to be impartial?
When you go and you ask an employee in the library to have it be between you and them, off the record, you are undermining the chain of command and the authority of the library director. It is not our job to go to staff, and it says that clearly in the policies, that we are not to go to staff and interfere with the day-to-day workings of the library. It clearly states that in the state thing, in the state manual, thank you, and the policy manual. There,
Okay. Okay.
so, everybody have a chance to read this, the trustee code of ethics?
So I have a question. Is this a document, this is standard, where did this come from?
From our state library book.
From the state library book, okay, and this is something that library systems across the state have incorporated into, or most have incorporated into their bylaws?
Right.
Okay, so,
I think
sorry, I'm
these-
sort of shocked by all this that's been happening. So, just so I'm clear, so this is, you're asking for this to be included officially as part of our bylaws,
Policy manual.
policy manual?
In the bylaws.
In the bylaws.
In the bylaws, okay, just want to make sure I understand.
And I have another question. It says in our Board of Trustee Constitution that specific notice of proposed amendments shall be distributed by the board members at least 2 weeks prior to such meeting. Amendments to the Constitution become effective immediately. We just got this 2 days ago, and now you want to add them to the bylaws. We're supposed to have 2-week notice.
That's in our bylaws?
Yes, it's on
Okay.
page 4, article number 7, I guess the V2 is 7?
So if that's the case, we should vote next meeting.
Yeah, we can take it up next meeting.
Okay, so we're going to table this one now. But in the meantime, please, if you have any issues, deal with Stephanie.
So have other library boards adopted this as far as you
Yeah,
know?
it's
Most of them?
suggested to be adopted by the state library.
Yeah,
I think a lot of this was brought up with the workshop that we had with the state library
Yes.
person. So a lot of that information that she handed us at that
Yeah.
workshop is this.
Can I ask a question? So if we're inquiring about these programs and not getting sufficient answers about what they are, and we can't find information online, what was wrong with going to see what it's all about? We did nothing threatening to that. I think she's a wonderful library manager, and I told her that. The things she's doing with STEM, we were not threatening in any way whatsoever.
You made
We
them
just
very
asked-
uncomfortable. And you,
Excuse me, this is not a town hall meeting, and if you can't control yourself, I'm going to ask you to leave. We're trying to conduct business here.
you made staff very uncomfortable, and she could have asked you to leave, and you would have had to leave.
So what would your recommendation be if we're curious about what's going on in the library, that we get blamed for things?
Talk
What
to
would
me
your
or talk
concept
to
be?
your board chair. Do not go,
And what if we
do
can't
not
get
go
anywhere
to
through
my
that?
staff.
What if we don't get anywhere with that?
Then that would be, you'd have to take it up with the board chair, but you do not go to staff.
That seems very undemocratic to me, I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? The staff puts up a lot that we don't even realize with the public in general. And to have a board member go against it, it just, their morale is low to begin with everything that's going on. And for a board member to go and make them uncomfortable is just,
I
it's just
in no
not right.
way went against her. I was very complimentary of
In your
her.
opinion.
Would it not make more sense to go up the chain of command, right, rather than down? So if you don't get satisfaction from Lori or from Stephanie, then is there not someone, would you go to the county administrator? Or, you know, I mean, who is the next level? I don't think, you know, library staff is, that you can't make change by talking to the library staff. So I don't, where would be the next step to go?
Could it be
Or is it
brought-
the board? Is the board the final
It's
say?
the
So the
board.
board's the final say, okay.
I was gonna say, if you didn't feel like you were satisfied, could it not be brought before the board at a meeting?
I believe it was brought before the board, pretty much ignored the last meeting, concerns about that demon program.
Well, the last meeting, to me, it was just thrown out there, and I didn't feel like I had enough information to do anything with it.
None of us had enough information. That's why I wanted to go see what it was all about. I couldn't get information about it.
I'm sure, Stephanie, if we,
I
if there's.
communicated with Ms. Miller about it and reviews, and that it complied with our
Afterwards.
programming, no, before, programming
She was not
policy.
here.
Via email, I've been communicating with her. The fact is, as a governing body, just like council, the councilmen don't go and, undermine Ken and talk about all these things and corner library staff and ask them, why are you doing this program? What is this? And it's just not acceptable behavior. It's not ethical behavior. It's outlined in this policy. So I think we need to adopt it into the bylaws and interact and use that going forward.
Are these the only ethical bylaws that we have to adapt or to adopt into the bylaws, or can we come up with, because some of it takes it sounds like, I don't know, you know what? I'm going to go over it, research it before I have more comments on it.
Well, I don't think the goal tonight is to chastise either of you for much of what you did. It's just it's common sense and a good policy to think about it before you approach library staff. I could see myself walking into the library and chatting with one of the staff members, and perhaps crossing the line, into a discussion that is probably inappropriate, but I think it's something that we should all be aware of, being very, very careful not to do that, because it can quickly feel confrontational to a staff member, or feel that that you're putting some kind of pressure on them. So I think it's just, we learn from, making mistakes, and so I think that's where we are with this.
Okay, next item for business then, since we're tabling this until this will be voted on at the September meeting. We need to move the September meeting from the 12th to the 19th. There is a conference. Oh, can we, the talking?
Yes.
Do you do you want to take it outside and talk while we're conducting our business, or do you want to stay in? So we need to move, there's a conference going on the 12th, so we need to move the date from the 12th to the 19th. Is everyone in favor of that? All those in favor? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the appeal of Mame. Okay, you were right, Stephanie. I had no idea. By Jessica Jor.
I have a few comments to put out and get response to.
Oh, before you start.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that the person who did the reconsideration, it was just for the first 17 pages. She read the first 17 pages and not the entire book, so under a new policy, it probably wouldn't even be considered, but she didn't like it, so she wants it. So go ahead.
Yes, so the petitioner has requested the removal of the book based on the reading of the first 17 pages, in which the protagonist's friend describes a sexual experience with her boyfriend. In fact, the protagonist is not interested in hearing about it, but her friend is clearly an oversharer. In the book, there are 3 sexual encounters by the protagonist with boyfriends, as only one part of her seeking to develop a life independent of her responsibilities for her ailing father, which she undertakes with little help from her largely absentee mother and irresponsible brother. Other much more significant parts of her development are learning to be assertive with roommates, her employers, and ultimately her family. She emerges as a more whole person with a boyfriend who is generally responsive, an employer who recognizes her creative talents, and a more balanced relationship with her family and her Ghanaian culture. The book is well written and effectively tells the story, parts of which many adults can relate to. The book is in the adult section, partly because the protagonist is in her 20s and thus would not be seen as a peer for young adults. The request for removal is unwarranted. The brief scenes involving sex are not protracted and not obviously of a prurient nature, and are not at all the focus of the book. The request for removal is flawed partly because the petitioner did not read much of the book. Also, although they were not in place when the petitioner made this request, the board is developing a policy that will not honor a request to remove a book from the adult section of the library. Further, the argument that the petitioner is a taxpayer denigrates the fact that many other taxpayers would likely find the book of value. The argument that the favorably disposed reviewer does not live in Pickens County assumes that the county is homogeneous and would not have a person with that perspective, an unlikely circumstance. Finally, the personal attack on the library director's character and integrity is unwarranted and can be even dangerous in our current polarized society.
Well, I'm going to vote that it just stays in the adult section. I don't think that we need to start reviewing adult books. I read the book. It was not anything.
The action is to remove it, and
Yeah.
so I move that we not remove it and it remain in the library in the adult
Right.
section.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Well, wait a minute.
So you want a discussion?
No, we first, oh yeah, second discussion. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Do I need to recuse myself? Because I didn't read it.
Yes.
Well, good, because I didn't even know we were supposed to read it. I had no idea until I got the agenda 2 days ago.
You didn't have your list of,
It didn't say, it was at the meeting, after the meeting of the whole, we were supposed to get an email to say which ones we were supposed to get. These were in the adults, so we were not told to read them. I was not, sorry, I guess I need to pay attention to my library staff. I did not
I'll
read
go
it.
back and look through the emails and.
do we want to
Make
table
sure
this
that
one for the next meeting then? We can do that so you have a chance to read it?
Do you want us to wait?
We'll go ahead. We'll wait. We'll wait until the September meeting, so that gives her a chance to read.
Read it again.
Yeah.
And I have a copy in my office, if you'd like it.
I thought that we were, if they're in the adult section, that we were automatically not reading them because there's nowhere else to move it.
That
That was
policy's
what
not
it
in
was-
place yet.
I don't know if we've officially voted on that yet, right?
Right.
Right.
So we're talking about doing that, but it's not official yet. But then the
So the
question.
fact that they didn't read it for 17 pages shouldn't factor, and the fact that it wants to be put off the shelf should not be a factor, because we haven't approved all that yet either.
Right.
Okay.
So we can say it's moot and we're just not going to vote on this book. How is that?
If we vote on the
Well,
policies.
I think because the reconsideration, in all fairness, the reconsideration request was made before our current policies would go into effect. So I think we need to consider it under our whatever
Okay.
previous
Right, that's
policies
fair.
we had. That's in fairness to the reconsideration request.
Okay. So we will table it until the September meeting
Right.
to give everyone a chance to read it.
I believe that I put it on the agenda of one of the last meetings, what the next books that y'all were reviewing were. Because there was some confusion about if you were reviewing them that night, or
Right.
they were the upcoming books, and those were the upcoming books.
Well, I have to say, I read it, the first 17 pages, and it is extremely mild compared to All Boys Are Blue, which is extremely graphic. So I have no problem with it being in the adult section. If there's other books are in the adult section that are much, much, much worse, I have no problem with it staying in the adult section.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead though and give Elisa a chance to read the books. Okay, the decision to reconsider, let's talk about it. This is a book that was already reconsidered and moved to the adult section. And
Well, I support the previous decision by the library director and board to retain this book in the adult section. I agree that this book can be seen as controversial in its attempt to be comprehensive in its discussion of a broad range of topics about the biology and practices of sexual and gender diversity in relationships. However, by the use of highly stylized abstract drawings and a relatively matter-of-fact narrative, it is unlikely to incite anyone's prurient interest. Further, it does not promote any activities, that is not grooming anyone. Although written with young adults in mind, I agree with its placement in the adult section, as I feel it would be best if parents, when they feel their teen is ready, should in fact talk about the content of the book with them, including their opinions on readiness for intimate relationships or other subjects in the book. I believe this was the position of the library staff as well, which resulted in its current placement. Teens are going to learn about sex in imperfect ways on the internet or from some less informed people than the author. Why not have a source that is informed and takes the subject seriously? So I suggest that we just retain this book in the adult section.
May I speak to it?
Yeah.
I guess of the new board members, when we looked at that, reviewed that book, I was the only one that voted to remove it completely from the library. I was a fairly new board member. And as my opinion, okay, we give our opinions, okay? I have never seen a more graphic, animated sex book that left nothing to the imagination. I couldn't believe it was in the library. You know, I couldn't believe it was in the library. I cannot remember where it was at before you moved it to the adult section.
It was in YA and then staff moved it to adult.
Okay. And that's my opinion. It is animated pornography.
And can I say something? It's also extremely misogynistic.
I mean, I can't remember when we reviewed it. It's been a while.
January of 2023, I believe.
Okay. I guess my memory's not very good, but I do remember certainly voting to keep it in the adult section and not for parents to use as a guide for their children, or not, or for parents to, but I definitely agree that it should be in the adult section. I guess I don't really have an opinion if we should vote on it again, since it was only a year ago.
Well, I think we need to vote if we're going to leave it in the adult section.
Now, this would be to vote to start the process
Right.
over again, so I would have to write a letter, then it would have to be, to go through the whole process. That's what you're voting on if you want to start that complete reconsideration process.
Do a reconsideration, we have to vote on that.
Has it been appealed again?
Yes. It's been up for reconsideration again, not appealed to the board yet.
And our policy isn't in place to put 2 or 3 years on a book.
Correct.
We just needed guidance on if you wanted to, we need to vote on if you want to take it up again or not.
Yes.
That's our first.
I mean, we don't have
Whether we
policies
even
in
take it
place
up.
yet. So,
Right.
yes, we have.
Well, the fact that we don't have one right now means that it's kind of, we
You-
need guidance on
You all
how to-
voted at a previous meeting that if a book was already reconsidered, that the board would have to vote to reconsider it again until we updated the policy. So you're voting on whether or not to even reconsider it again,
I make a
or just
motion
leave
that-
it where it is.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Didn't mean to speak up.
Well, I move that we not reconsider it again, just to put a motion on the table.
All right, we have one motion on the table to reconsider it. So do we have a second for that one?
Okay. No, you're fine.
Okay, so we're voting
To reconsider. And then Hap will have,
And just to be clear, there's nothing in our policy that says we can make this vote now, right? no time frame that we've listed, so.
We have not listed a time frame.
Okay.
You can also table it until we've had policy discussion.
Since it's in the adult section already, the next step would be to remove it. So I think that we table it until our policy is done. I'm sorry.
I thought I had a motion out there.
Well, Danny has a motion.
And there's
Yeah.
no second. There's
Oh,
no
he
s-
seconded it. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I thought he said I motion, I move.
No, Hal. He made a
Okay.
motion to
So we
not-
have a motion on the table to reconsider it, to go ahead and reconsider it, and we have a second. And now, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of reconsidering it?
Of reconsidering.
Of reconsidering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of reconsider, to
Reconsider.
Oh, yeah,
Reconsider.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's three, all those
It's going
against?
another direction.
Okay, now we have a motion. Do you want to make a motion just to table it until we have the
I
policy?
think it's
done.
redundant. My motion is redundant because we just,
But do we want to table it until,
no, I don't, I think we just,
we don't need to?
I think we're done.
Okay, okay. So it stays in the adult section.
Yeah.
Old business, the presentation on, what?
No, you, you skipped one.
Just to make sure that
Oh, I'm sorry, then,
we know.
I did miss that. The next one, the appeal, there's an appeal for Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl at next month's meeting. So that we'll vote on that at next month's meeting.
Okay, so 2 books at next month's meeting now, right?
Mame, or Mame.
Okay,
Yes.
so- Right, so to be clear, we're voting on 2 books.
I think we
next
need a
month.
little carrot up there, Mame. Yes, and then Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl.
Okay.
Just so
We have-
everyone's aware.
Copies of that, if you need them.
Does anyone need a copy of Me, Earl, and the Dying
I
Girl?
do.
Mhm. I do
But
too.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, could you name the books again? There's 3 books, right, or just 2?
Two.
2.
I got it.
Okay, old business, Cassie's gonna give a presentation on their book ordering.
So I watched the last meeting, and there seemed to be some confusion about what we kind of see when we're ordering books. So we thought this would be helpful. You've got 2 handouts in here. So we get professional review magazines that we choose books from, but we also get the vendor that we purchase books from also creates catalogs. So that's the first page. You just kind of see 1 page out of the catalog, and it shows, I've highlighted it, it shows the grade level that it's recommended for. So this particular one, the Sherlock Society, is recommended for grades 3 through 7. And then the second page is what it actually looks like in the vendor website when we're choosing the books. And then it has, if it was reviewed professionally, then it would have the reviews listed there. So this particular one has 2 reviews on it. It also shows us the audience level, the subject, so this one is juvenile fiction. And then the reviews oftentimes list an age range as well. So that's how we determine kind of placement of an item.
To clarify the age range. So
Oh.
for this one,
yeah.
in juvenile, they do give you a range. So for, I would know we were talking about that, about the YA does not. It is
Yeah,
age and up.
It'll say like grade 8 and up for teen books.
Now, you said you're a vendor. Did you name the vendor, or is this the vendor?
It's Baker and Taylor.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is one of the
Yeah,
vendors
this
that-
is
One
the,
of
this
them.
is the main vendor that we
Main,
use. We have a few other ones that we can use, but this one is kind of the best one.
And then for younger age books, is there also a description of reading level so that you're able to, not just age or grade, but also
It depends on the type of book that it is. If it's like an early reader book, those are often labeled as like 1, 2, 3, depending on their reading level for early readers. But that's not the grade or the age or anything. It's reading level 1, reading level 2,
Right.
reading level 3.
They always give you some information about the intended audience.
Yeah.
And to pick up, I'm sorry, can I speak?
Yeah.
And to, like, how did you figure, like, what made you go, I want this book? Like, just
Oh,
like
this
on
was
the
just-
number
I
one
just-
bestsellers, or?
I just pulled this randomly.
But how, like,
So when we select a book, that's what you're asking, what makes us
Thank you.
choose it? There are a number of factors that we use. If we think it's going to be, the number one is it this going to be of interest to people in our community? And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to appeal to everybody in the community, but that it would appeal to some people in the community. So we would look at things like, like if it's a series, was this popular already? Are we going to continue the series? Like there's the Warrior series is hugely popular. We're automatically going to get the next book in that series. Just making sure that we have a robust collection of a variety of topics. So if we don't have, something on, I don't know, if we don't have a lot on fishing or on Chinese culture or whatever, and we see something, we don't have enough in this, we need to add to this.
Does
just a
anybody
variety
read it to verify what the publisher and the author for age range? Does anybody, or you just basically go off of exactly what they say?
We go off of what they say, unless we need to look at something further, but there's no way we could read every single book that we purchase.
So I've noticed there are some titles that pop up in these requests for reconsideration, like Emily Hopkins, for instance, that I think that's her name, that those books are always like on the edge. Do you look at those kinds of things and say, well, maybe we better check that out more carefully before we order it, put it on the shelf?
I personally have read a review and thought, I don't know about that, so I'm just not going to order it.
So, but do you do every single book, like the 1,000 books every month? Do you look at it and order every single book?
No, I don't.
So
We
who
have-
does
We have
that?
a variety of selectors.
A variety of selectors.
Yes.
So who would that be?
Staff.
Staff librarians.
So certified librarians.
Mhm.
So there's nobody like overseeing these selections. There's nobody there's like no guardrails. That's what I'm trying to say.
The guardrails are the collection development policy, so that the board puts in place. So everybody has to follow that collection development policy. And then part of that is the reconsideration. If they do have a question about a book, they're welcome to come and talk to us about it or talk to the collection development manager. But really part of that reconsideration process is first bringing it to staff and saying, hey, can you look at this? Because I don't think it belongs in this section. And like I said before, not every book ends in an appeal. We just had one at Pickens where somebody brought it to me and said, hey, I think this is in the wrong section. I was like, you're right. I researched it. It is in the wrong section. Let's move it where it should be. So that happens.
And you can do that without needing a reconsideration, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Staff can
Yeah, we
come
can
to you
resolve,
and say,
yeah.
hey, this book does not belong
Yeah.
here. Now, what if you don't agree with that staff member?
I would probably get a few other librarians to look at it first and then
And then what do you
ultimately
do?
make a decision.
I'm sorry, what do you do with that book then? Like if you agree it shouldn't be in the library, what happens to it?
If I agree it should be in the library.
That it should not be in the library, what do you do with it?
Well, usually, we're reviewing it, so it's not on the shelf. I mean, it's still in circulation, but if I'm looking at it, I have it. And then if I'd send it to another librarian and say, hey, what do you think about this? But it's in circulation. People can put holds on it. They can request it while we're in that review process, just like the process for our reconsideration.
So if the review process results in a decision that this book is terrible, should not be in the library, what happens to it?
We remove it.
Throw it away?
Yep. Or give it to the friends, depending. But if it's something that we know the friends aren't gonna want.
So it is possible for us to have a book totally removed if we all agree that it should not be in the library. As the
If the
board,
board-
we could make that decision, right? We could vote on it and decide that a book should be out of the library.
It would be, yeah, part of the policy. And they discussed that at the last meeting that you weren't here for, but we do have a policy that has information about that tonight that you can sort of edit and make suggestions.
So typically, if you just remove a book completely, is it a book from the children's or youth section and not necessarily the adult section, or is it?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So it'd be rare that
Yes.
you would remove a book from the adult section?
Yes.
Okay.
It's rare altogether
Mhm.
that we would remove it. It would have to be way beyond, like, we made a mistake when we purchased this, and it needs to be removed.
I have another question. If, say, after a couple years, it's not checked out, no one, and do you run a report to find out data collection and how it hasn't, like, do you run a report for like the last 2 years, or do you do it like for the last 5 years? Do you
Depends
let-
on shelf space. Typically, it would be 4 or 5 years unless we needed a lot more shelf space, and then we would run it for less years.
Now, is that a report that's ran often enough that you?
We have to
What's
continuously do that to make room for more books.
Is it 0 checkouts, or do you have a guideline, like maybe like it hasn't been checked out for like only 5 times in the last 4 years?
It's low. If it's 0, we're gonna really look at it and be
Yeah.
like, this book hasn't checked out for 2 years. But even if it's like
How
3,
often do you do that?
it depends on space. It
Yeah.
depends on time, staff time.
I'd say at least twice a year.
It's part of a good collection your collection needs to be weeded. So it's not something that we do, it's ongoing. We don't wait every 10 years and do it, It would be 1 to 2 years to just look at the health of our collection.
Would that be something that I would be allowed to ask to look at the data to see about like what our community is really wanting? What books that are being checked out or not? Like, what if some of these books right here that are being reconsidered are on the thin line of being knocked out?
There has been one, and we weeded it.
One.
Yep.
I assume there's exceptions. to-
There is exceptions,
I
like
mean,
you have to
you're
look
not
at
gonna
each
take
thing.
Shakespeare off the
No,
shelf.
yeah. So that's why I'm kind of saying if you want a list, there are gonna be things on that list that we keep.
Even if it's not checked out?
Yes.
Why?
Because it fills up.
Classics,
But they're still
Classics.
checked out though.
not all classics are, but you still want them there.
And if it's a subject, like, we don't want to weed everything out of a subject, in nonfiction and not have anything in the library on that subject. We want to have something. So there, we do
So
look
there's
at-
not really a criteria for it, you kind of make it up as you go?
Well, they use their professional expertise to decide.
But there's no guideline?
There is. There's guidelines, but you also have to use your expert opinion when you're deciding on it. So there's, if something is out of date and there's new information, it'll be on the shelf, but it's wildly inaccurate. So we would remove something like that and update it with something that has the current information, things like that.
I'm just trying to think of a way to see where the community, because you could see where the community's checking out these books, what's popular over here and what's sitting there, but you haven't had to weed it out because you still have room, right? You only do it twice a year, so if you don't need the room for certain sections,
We still
then
have
you're
to
not gonna
have
weed it
a
out, right?
well-rounded library collection. Even if people aren't checking out certain things, there are certain things that we still need to retain on the shelf to have a good library collection.
Because some people come here and don't check out the book, but use them for a reference point. So they're here, they're not checked out, so we have no record of them being
Right.
checked out. They're just used for reference.
Yeah.
Or they may read it while they're here. Right?
I have
Question.
a question.
Go ahead.
I'm
You
sorry.
first.
You go, Danny.
Okay. It would be good if what Alicia has asked to see what is the higher volume of books being checked out. That will tell you a lot about the community and, what they're interested in. And what I look at, if we need probably a policy, something in place, if these books just sitting there, they just want to make a well-balanced library, but they're not being checked out, wouldn't it make sense to take those off and replace them with books similar to what's the popular books or types of books the community is checking out? I don't know. If I was running a business, that's what I would do. What's selling? If it's not selling,
So
we go to something else.
we would have more of those types of books available that's popular, but we
Yeah.
still, if using the fishing example, if that's it's a low ticket
Yeah.
item,
Yeah.
you still have to have things on fishing for somebody to come in, even if it's only checking out, once or twice a year.
But wouldn't it help you at the purchasing side to see, hey, these books on this item is really, these are really getting off the shelf, so maybe we need to have some
we know.
more of those. But the ones that aren't, then you look in a different direction about fishing, but just a different way, a different type of book for it. You know what I mean? That would be more appealing to a certain audience.
It sounds like
That's what we
that's what
do.
you're doing. I think we have,
Yeah.
we're not a bookstore.
Right.
We're the public library, so we have to have books that are hugely
Every-
popular, and then some that maybe a very small segment of our community want to read, because the library, I am a broken record, is for everybody. So I just don't agree that we as a board should be doing the work of librarians. I am not qualified, I have no education as a librarian, have no qualifications to select books to go on the shelves. I trust you that we have a robust, diverse collection, and I understand that there might be books that hardly anybody ever takes out, but they still need to be there to round out the collection. I don't want to get involved in library work at that level. I don't think that's my role.
It's hard work,
And
too,
it-
to keep
and it's
a
not my role
good,
as a board member.
balanced collection.
I don't think it's my role.
My question was, so how does request play into this, your selections?
It's part of our policy. It's in our, that people can make requests, and based on if they make a request for an out-of-print book that's $200, we're probably not going to buy it unless it's something that's out of print and it's the history of Pickens County, or something that we really need to have, and we then wouldn't check out. It would go in the South Carolina room. So there's that factor. And that's really the main one, is money. And then can we even get it? If it's an old paperback series from 1980, can we get the third book? I don't know. We're not going to get it if it costs $500. But for the most part, and then I've made this.
95%.
We look at it as we would look at a book that we're purchasing. So I think I've said this example before. During COVID, there were a lot of people self-publishing books that had really dangerous information about what you should do to cure COVID. So we really needed to look at those and say, is this going to be good information that we want to, and it's self-published, so there's no reviews, there's nothing like that. So we have to make those decisions based on, basically it's the same as our collection development policy. But we are well-funded, so if we can get that book and it's not dangerous, and we'll add it to the collection, because I've always said that's the easiest way to know what your community wants. If they walk up and tell you, this is the book I want.
Shows you
And that's
community
why I was
interest.
curious just how
But-
that goes.
If you have to have a balanced library, who are you to say that book's not appropriate?
If it's dangerous, she said. If it's not.
I mean, I Want to Be a Serial Killer is dangerous. You know what I mean? Like you just said, you have to have a well-balanced library, so if you have, I'm just going by what you
I
said, and I'm
think
just
it's
trying to clarify.
irresponsible to put health information out there that's unproven in a self-published book that has no reviews. I mean, if I want to be a serial killer, had great reviews and people wanted to read it,
It'd be
probably
here.
put it, yeah.
Any more discussion on there? Thanks for doing that. Okay, item 8B, proposed review of materials, policy, and procedure. HAP went ahead and, Stephanie, this is in your packet also, and then HAP has been sending out emails along with Stephanie, and they've been working on it, so.
Can I bring a motion before we do this?
Which, is it related to what's on the agenda?
Yes. It has to do with a motion to remove the ALA policies of freedom to read, and, because we aren't a member of ALA, but our policies have not been changed since 1997. Can I bring a motion to remove the freedom to read and the Library Bill of Rights, and we can update policies ourselves? Because we're not part of the ALA, right?
You don't have to be a part of the ALA to adopt those as part of your guiding principles. of
But if we're
public
not,
library.
we don't have to, right?
Right? I mean, we don't have to have those as our policies, correct?
Correct.
They're guidelines, they're used as guidelines.
But if we are trying to update policies age-related, age-appropriate, or move books, or kind of put restrictions on some books for the under 12 and 13, then that freedom to read policy and the Library Bill of Rights policy contradict that.
They do, because it very clearly says, no person regardless of age, color, creed, whatever, can be denied to check out any material from the library. So why are we spending hours upon hours upon hours discussing ages for these books for kids to check out? It just does not make sense.
They're just guiding principles.
But we're using them, aren't we? I mean,
And you brought
Because
it,
we can't think of every single policy. These people have been doing this for years and years, and they
I brought a
have-
motion forward, can we just go with
And
that?
now we're discussing.
You
Do we
to
have a
second.
second?
You have to have a second
Do I have a
first.
second for her?
Second.
Okay, now can we have discussion? This is when you ask a question, I think that means that everybody's entitled to answer your question. That's why I tried to answer. These have been these people have been doing this for years and years, and they have they're put together by legal people, lawyers, professionals in this field. This is just a guideline for us to go by, because we're not going to think of all this, because no one on this board is a lawyer. No one on this board is a librarian. So that is why we use these, as Stephanie says, as a guideline. If there's parts of this that you don't want to go in there, then when we start doing our policies, then you say, I don't like that section. We don't need to add that section.
So what you're saying is that we can endorse the principles, but there are some that maybe we would decide as a board, we don't necessarily want to follow that exactly, right? By us saying we endorse these, or doesn't. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying we don't want to, or we do, I'm just asking that question.
And this, again, is what we need.
I think you either endorse it or you don't.
Okay.
And can I just, to Nancy's point about not denying a checkout, I think that is library staff cannot deny a checkout. That doesn't mean a parent can't deny a checkout, and I think that's the difference in what we're doing here with these new policies, is it is the parent is the one who is saying, I don't want my child to check these things out. A librarian can't make that determination for each individual family.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. The library is not doing the restricting, the parent is doing the restricting.
If they check out, if they're just coming and browsing and sitting and checking out, that's not the parent giving permission or not permission.
I would think that if they're in the library, that the parent would be giving permission or not permission.
For which books they can and can't check out?
Yeah. Because you have to be 13 to be in the library by yourself, so the parent's with them before they're 13. If they're over 13, then I would think the parent would at least know where they are and give
Yep, that
permission
doesn't
to be in
mean
the
they
library.
might not want them in the adult section.
Well, they need to have that conversation with their child before they let them in the library by themselves.
You can't expect librarians to police the children and where they go in the library. Obviously, from what I've heard, the librarians will, if 3 or 4 14-year-olds are in the adult section, they're all giggling, I suspect you go over and say, can I help you?
Can we help you?
Yeah. I mean, but as far as policing them, that, you can't ask librarians to do that. And again, I think that's the responsibility of the parents. The parents say that I don't want you in the adult section, period. Now, do children always obey their parents? Of course not.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those that are...
Wait, before we do that, I have one more thing. The role and the duties of the library board is to adopt policies, rules, and regulations. That is in the state library reference manual. So when you say we're not qualified, the state thinks we are to do policies and regulations.
But we're using these as guidelines, is what I'm saying, to help us. Because we would not think to come up with all of these on our own, I don't think. That's my opinion. That we use these as guidelines to help.
I'm not
Anything?
sure what the motion is at this
She
point.
wants to
I'm
move
sure you-
that we no longer use the freedom to read and the ALA as
Library Bill of Rights.
library, and the Library Bill of Rights when we're making our policy decisions.
In other words,
So can I ask you, you don't want to use them as guidelines or anything? You
And the
want
reason why I
us-
brought this motion up is because of a comment that Stephanie made the last meeting. At the end of the meeting, it was actually, thank you for making the comment, because I would never have thought of it, so I appreciate your comment. At the last meeting, she made at the end of the comment when I asked about the bill of, when that paperwork was there at the end of the meeting, and I'm like, oh, what is this? And we were starting to discuss policies, and she said, we should probably discuss this policies, because this might affect some of the policies that we're talking about right now if we want to adapt freedom of read. And do you remember that comment?
Yeah, this library has endorsed the freedom to read and statement in the Library Bill of Rights since the 90s. It's been in our book. And I just wanted to remind y'all of that as
That some of the policy
guidelines for
changes we're
policies.
making
Yeah,
might coincide with this.
We give it to staff when they start here. It's understood that we have professional librarians and that this library system has adopted the Bill of Rights and endorses the Library Bill of Rights and the Freedom to Read statement. And that's a very powerful thing when you're recruiting great librarians.
So your motion is to remove those statements from this policy. Is that the motion?
Remove
No.
the policy.
She wants
Remove
to
the policy altogether.
remove the policy altogether.
Remove those policies.
To not use the bill of...
No, to no longer endorse.
The policy
That's
of the
not
Bill of
really
Rights
what
and
is on
of
the
the freedom to
agenda.
read.
Yeah, this isn't on the agenda.
It was part of the materials, because it's at the beginning of this draft.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So I wanted to bring up that motion because that would change the whole concept of this. And our ideas of policies on what we're trying to incorporate and change. If we have to go against every line of that per item, it could change what policies we can and can't have. I wanted to make it a lot simpler by removing it and start making our own policies. I'm not saying that we can't adapt some of it, but to adapt it all and then come in and ask for age appropriateness for certain sections of the library, or if we start talking about the limits of the age for the books when you purchase, you know, how the publishers, and they're saying certain, if we put restrictions or policies on each section in our policies, then that could affect that.
I think, though, it's back again to sort of how you're interpreting that. Like, if you want librarians to police this stuff instead of parents, then maybe you might think about not endorsing it anymore. But that endorsing it still places the responsibility with the parent. We're not making that decision, which.
But couldn't that, by removing it, affect the way we do our collection policy? The way we collect books? I mean, do we not have a right to check that policy too? And
Yeah,
maybe
and we
correct it
are.
and
I
change
think
it?
that's the- yeah.
I mean, this freedom to read in the Bill of Rights that is in our policy books is very, very strict. You know, I mean, it's very open-minded. It has no restrictions technically, overall. I'm summarizing very badly. But overall, there's pretty much, everybody has every freedom. Well, right now, we're trying to put the blame on the parents and put, not the blame, responsibility onto the parents. But the only way we're doing that is by the library card. That's not putting any restrictions in the library itself to
Right.
help parents make that decision too. But by changing some policies and making our own policies for each children's section, then that's putting the responsibility on the parents, but also giving the parents information, and we're guiding too. I mean, it can work both ways. This freedom to read is not, and the Bill of Rights is not giving us that guidance for parents.
But we can set our own policy for parents, right?
But if it goes against the freedom to read, then we can't, can we?
I think if you're going to do something like have librarians select books and police books for other people's children, then that would be in conflict with the statement. I think and I think that's how you're interpreting it, but I think the majority of our policies would not be in conflict with either the freedom to read or the Library Bill of Rights. They're not right now, because we're still giving the parent the option.
But we're trying to change policy.
Right.
We
I
might
don't
not have
think
it
that
in
it's-
plan right now, but what if we want to change some policies that go against freedom to read?
I mean, you could. It's guidelines. Wouldn't make sense to endorse it. But I think you're thinking that there's going to be conflict there that's not really there. Unless
But
you
it
want
is there.
librarians to police where kids can go and what they can check out instead of the parent.
I thought we were trying to make policies for the library. I'm so confused on, we're trying to, okay, in this first statement, it says, we adopt the principal document in the Library of the Rights of Freedom and Read Statement of the American Library Association. But what if our policies aren't associated with the freedom to read? What if we are specific and say, we are having none of this certain type of book in this area? I'm just saying, what if we make a policy that way that is against this? Which one do we choose? Which one are you going to change your staff to be taught on how to do, the freedom to read or the new policy, if they're in conflict? Because they're in conflict. We're already in conflict with the freedom to read some of the policies. That's why we're doing policy changes right now. If we thought it was great and perfect, we wouldn't be making policy changes.
We're not making policy changes right now because they're in conflict with the Bill of Rights or the freedom to read.
I don't see that the policies, mostly what's in this document is the reconsideration request. And these are the guiding principles for reconsideration. If you're talking about the library card as being in conflict, I don't think it is either, because the library is not restricting anybody's freedom to read. As you just said, you can go anywhere in the library and read what you want. As far as checking books out, yes, we're giving parents the option to control what sections their children can, but not the library. The library is not telling a child that you can't read anything in the library and that you can't check, and the library is not saying you can't check a book out. The parents are controlling that.
Okay.
So there's no conflict between freedom to read and what we're trying to accomplish.
What if we come up with a policy of collection that says no vulgar language no vulgar obscenity sexual act, no sexual act at all can be in the books of 12 and under.
Well, we wouldn't.
Doesn't that go against?
Yeah, well, but we wouldn't come up with a policy like that because that would be, that would be a restriction, but we're not proposing anything like that. The things we're proposing are not in conflict with the American Library Association
The
and the First
thing you're
Amendment.
not proposing, but
Pardon?
I might decide to propose one of those.
I'm sorry?
I might decide and say, hey, one of my policies, for 12 and under, I do not want vulgar material. I don't want any obscenities, sexual obscenities, for the collection process, to remove some of these obscenity books off the shelf of 12 and under. If we have a guideline that like the proviso says that. I'm not saying that we're not in compliance or whatever, but I'm saying, what if, someone comes in and says that they don't want this? And we start making...
To develop these policies, it is not about what you want as an individual. It is what is for the community.
In my district and who I represent, yes.
But I'm sure there are people in your district that don't agree 100% with you.
I'm sure you're right, but I have talked to at least 100 of them because I've walked around my neighborhoods and libraries and everything over there. So I have talked to people in my community.
But what district are you?
4.
4 doesn't speak for all of Pickens County.
But I represent them.
Well, you have to be careful with that because as a board member, if you look at your state, again, the guidelines, you represent, when you're on this board, it's not really like a breakdown like council. You represent the entire library system and all of the people on Pickens County. Someone may have selected you, but as a board member, you represent everybody in the county collectively. You don't just represent the people of your district.
So your motion is, again, to...
Take out.
Remove
the
freedom to read policies in the ALA American Library.
In this document? Or from the policies?
From our policy.
You no longer endorse it, I think is...
From everything.
Well, I'll call the question. I think we've probably debated it enough.
Okay, so we have the second. All those in favor?
Have you had a second?
Yes, Danny second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
To remove it?
To remove it? All those opposed? Okay. It's 7:45, so do you want to go ahead and we need to review?
I think you've all, we've been around and around on multiple drafts of this, and I've gone back and forth with Stephanie and Cassie and others to put this together. The only thing that I gave you a few minutes ago was just some mechanical editing to remove a redundancy and to organize some of the paragraphs a little bit better, but the content didn't change. So, and again, you've had, I think, sufficient time to review these policies, and we talked about most of them last month.
Right.
And they've been embellished a little bit and reorganized, but with any minor editorial changes that might need to be made, mechanical ones, I'd like to make a motion that we accept this policy, this review of materials policy, which includes specific procedures and policies regarding reconsideration requests. So I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any
I
discussion?
wanted to say that we did meet with 2 separate committees of library staff that would be handling these, and these were recommendations that we put together from multiple library systems within the state and throughout the country. and sort of worked together to build this, and then we had a secondary committee look at it and say, does this work for you? So this is coming from a staff recommendation.
Can I make a comment? Is it
It's
okay?
discussion time.
I went through this table with the consideration, and according to my math, it's like, it could be over 100 days from the time the request for removal, for reconsideration, comes to you and gets to the board, which I think is not suitable, not appropriate. That's a long time. And I also would like to say, this is kind of off the subject, but Susan has suggested this so many times, and I think it's such a good idea, that we have a separate place in the library for these books that are being reconsidered, these books that have been requested for removal. And I think that would, she said, place all of the challenged items in their own collection. To me, that would solve so many of these problems, that a parent would have to accompany that child into that section if they want to check those books out. We wouldn't need the warning signs. We wouldn't need to worry about people checking out books they're not supposed to check out. We can have free browsing by our children in the library. I just see so many advantages to that idea, and that's not the first time you've recommended that, and I just thought it was great every time you did.
I thought about that for a minute, but then I started thinking, one, that's, if you have your challenge book section, then I assume that children are going to make a beeline for that section because these are books, there's something, I shouldn't be reading in this section, so you're going to shine a huge spotlight on those books if we call it the reconsidered section or the challenge section or something. And then also we're saying that there's something wrong with these books.
But they're being challenged, right?
Right?
But that doesn't mean there's something wrong with them.
But then if we vote to keep them where they are, then do we remove them from the section, or or they stay in the section for all eternity, or how do we?
I thought it was just portrayed in your thoughts, and I'm
Let me
sorry
just
if I'm
point-
speaking
let me
out
point
of
out
turn.
one thing
I
that-
thought you were just, as it's being challenged, it was in a certain area and then moved back
And we
to
actually
wherever.
discussed this at the last meeting, at length. And I could, where my policy came from was some of the other policies that I had read from around the country, of how different libraries were trying to approach the same thing that we've been approaching for a while now. And I'm not sure that it's the best scenario of what to do, just from the discussion of the previous meetings discussion. I'm on the fence about that.
Bear in mind that when a book is under reconsideration, it's on the library website. Its status is on the library website. So if a parent wants to know what books are under reconsideration, they can go to the website. And if they don't want their children reading books that are under reconsideration, they can find out what those are.
And that's kind of where the discussion was from the last meeting, that I'm like, yes, we do provide a way for parents to know what is being reconsidered, or the general public knows. All they have to do is go to the website, there it is. And as far as the 100 days, I can kind of appreciate where sometimes it takes that long, because we have been told in multiple ways that the attempt was to overwhelm with the amount that is being put out. So a lot of times it gets bogged down just from the sheer amount of reconsiderations that are being brought in. So it's not, I don't think that they're being ignored or trying to be put off. I think that they're working on it as quickly as they can. And we, when it's brought to us, then I know I come in periodically to see what book is available next that's on those lists. So it's kind of hard for us too to get.
And if we adopt this policy with no adults, that'll take a tremendous amount of books off the reconsideration list.
If you want it to go into effect.
Right.
When you adopt it.
After.
Right.
What is there, I should know this, what is our policy on for the board, the amount of time that we take to review and vote on a book? Or do we have that policy yet?
In here, it says that you will only consider 3 books per meeting. So,
Per meeting, okay.
I
So
mean,
that could be
if 100 people turn in for different books all at the same time, it's just going to be a while.
Right, I guess that's it. So it flows down right to the board as well. So 3 books a month for all of us to read maybe is the maximum.
I'm
Well,
maxed out, I know that.
And we all agreed that last time that reading 3 books in addition to whatever else you need to be reading in your life a month would be sufficient.
Unless they're.
As it is, we're not all able to read them now, apparently.
Unless they're children or youth books, then that's much quicker, but for the adult books, that takes.
Again, if we have enough copies for
Right.
everybody. If we have 1 copy, it's still gonna take a while.
And I think that's another point that needs to be made too. We've heard several times where taxpayer money shouldn't buy this book. Well, if we're having to buy multiple copies of this book just for reconsideration, taxpayer money is being used to buy a book that you didn't want to be here anyway. So it's kind of like, what do you do?
But the motion.
I mean, I agree, 100 days seems like a long time,
We're not
but when I look
discussing
at
the
the
motion at this point.
logistics involved, I don't know how to make
100
it.
days and then it comes here.
Right.
And, well, this is the first time we've put those restrictions on. So if you think of how long it's taking us to consider it now, it's longer than that. So there are parts of this that sort of restrict how many a person can do, and the other side of that, the compromise is, okay, then we'll put some deadlines on it. We'll sort of limit what's coming in so we can work through with deadlines the ones that we do get. So that was sort of the compromise. And then adding that along the way, there will be a lot more communication with the person who has filed the reconsideration.
And the 100 days is a maximum. Anyway.
Right, that's a maximum.
It's not likely that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor of...
What's the motion
I was
again?
gonna say,
Remind us,
can we
please.
To adopt this policy.
The whole policy as a whole?
Correct,
Okay, so we have a motion to approve and a second to approve.
correct.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Okay.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we have 1 policy. The second,
And I might add with a minor editorial
housekeeping.
housekeeping.
Can I just have just a quick comment, and I'm going to steal your idea, Lisa. Lisa suggested that when we have drafts like this, that there are dates on them. I think that was an excellent idea, so it's confusing when we go to all these different versions, we don't know which came first.
A date and timestamp would be
Yeah.
wonderful.
I'm not taking credit for your idea.
Oh,
but
no,
since
that was her idea.
It was a good one, so it would really help us to know, okay, this is the most current version. Yeah.
Yeah, like in the footer, like a
Or- yeah,
footer.
anywhere. Thank you.
On the page.
Okay, the proposed youth application. Stephanie sent this out to everyone, right?
And I might point out that I'm responsible for asking for there's 2 options to the youth application form. One that has 1 restricted category, and then there's one that has 2 restricted categories in it. I'm more or less in favor of having the 2 restricted categories so that parents would have more options in controlling access to books in the library. So the 1 would add young adult, to the children's and juvenile collections, but restrict people from going to the adult, children from checking out from the adult section. And the unrestricted would be just, would only then include the adult section. And I felt like that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, is between the young adult and adult section, that many parents would have really no problem with their children going to the young adult section, but may have concerns about going to the adult section. So that would be 3 categories. And I understand that would be more bookkeeping for the librarians, but it's actually my preference. And if it turns out that some of these categories are never used, then we can come back to this application form later and remove one of the categories if it's not being used by anyone.
And it's 13 and under, right?
Yeah, it's 13 and under.
That's the safe child. Trying to
Pardon me?
say-
It is.
Yes. Oh, on the application.
But this form then allows parents to restrict access to area, or restrict checking out books from certain areas. It also gives them the option to have the library report to them directly what their children are checking out of the library. So what we're doing is, the library's not controlling anything, but what we're doing is giving options to the parents to control access to materials, and for
Lori,
parents to know.
I was just going to correct, the form is right, because once they're 13, that's YA.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay, I gotcha.
It is correct.
So how doable is this for?
The suggestion from staff was for 2, but I understood what Hap was saying and that it would be better. So the difficulty is, there's difficulty on the side of IT and going through, there's about 700 yes or no questions you have to answer to create these accounts. Fine, we can do that. I think the difficulty is going to be in staff explaining this to parents when taking the time to explain it when they come up. Which category do you want? Having them remember what they signed up for, then they're going to have to come back and fill out a new form. It's not going to automatically roll over for them. And then just paying attention and keeping up with the cards. And when somebody comes up with a card and then a book that doesn't fit those restrictions, making sure they pay attention to this is not, the computer saying they cannot check this out.
And this is for, obviously, any new parent who comes in with their child for a library card, but also any existing cards, they
Yep.
could change it to this if they
Yeah,
wanted to.
we could put
but
that
it's-
information out and give like a time range and say,
Right. So one of the questions would be, do we want the 3rd category of just not allowing adult, right?
And I understand this is an experiment. I hope it's an experiment that works. But I would, to expedite this, I would move that we accept the youth application card, the new youth library card application with the 3 categories of restrictions.
So
With the 3.
is what you're actually doing is the policy that's behind them is what you're going to
right.
accept.
So
Yeah.
you're sort of agreeing on the policy, because the library board doesn't typically vote on forms.
Oh.
Because in case something needs to be moved or added, we would have to come back to the board for every little thing. So it would be
Yeah.
updating the policy.
So just
I
adding.
stand corrected.
Now, you guys tell us, if you want 2 or 3 categories,
Right.
but the policy is what you're actually going to be voting on.
I'm okay with 3.
I'm
Because,
okay with
right,
3.
there might be parents who would say yes to everything, but not adult, right?
Right.
So I think that's giving lots of options.
Okay, and where does, okay, does this, if we do this policy, do we need to specify 3, we want the 3 restrictions on here, or is that written in there? I don't,
You can,
I don't think it's necessary. 'Cause It
Okay.
just says materials within the collections indicated on the form, and you
Okay.
guys are just telling us you want the 3.
We want, okay, so
So
we
it
have a
would just
motion
be
from
account
Hal.
follows access, it'd be just young adult, and then the next,
So a parent could decide if they want their child to only be able to check out from the children's section, if they only want them to be able to check out from the children's and teen section, or if they want them to be able to check out from any section.
All sections.
Okay, so Hap made the motion to accept the policy with the 3. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? A unanimous decision.
Can I ask a question after the fact? So, I'm okay with the vote, but.
Okay.
So-
What's my
Don't
face
mean
like?
to alarm you. I don't want to alarm you. Is this something that you or we would want advertised on the website, that this is a new?
Yes.
Yeah, we would have to do all that.
Okay.
It's gonna take us a little while to
Sure.
get it set
Oh, yeah.
up, but then we would enact it right after that.
Set up
Okay.
and get staff trained and
As soon as
procedures
possible.
and all of that
And then
in place.
let the public know that this is now a
Yes.
new option for cars.
And can I ask a question? So if a child checks out a book that they're not allowed to check out, what happens? Is the
the whole library.
It'll,
I know.
there will be a pop-up
alarm?
that says this account does not allow this item to be checked out.
So there's capability to do that in your
Yeah.
computer system?
Yeah, but we wouldn't have proposed it if there wasn't.
Yeah. Okay, the last one is the proposed library signage.
I like them.
I have to say, I appreciate it. I hadn't thought about the statement about adults who aren't parents to not loiter in the children's area. I hadn't thought of that.
That
We-
has
we
always
already
been
do
in our
that.
Was it?
policy,
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that that's there.
They babysit that.
I think they're good too. Now, are you going to make these like posters to put into the
Yes.
lobby so that
Yeah.
parents
We can
upon?
put one into the lobby here, and in most of our branch libraries, we'll probably put the children's one in an area that it can be visible, and then we'll probably do one at the lobby, one in children's, and then one in the
Like on top of a stack, or how will they be, we might not know yet, how they'll be displayed? Like physically, how they'll be displayed?
Probably on a wall or on the end of a shelf.
Okay.
Whatever makes sense so they can be seen.
Visible.
Yeah, visible.
I know that you're alerting people to the new library card. On the website, could you also just put on there that we're alerting you to look for the new signage? Just so that they are aware that this is different. This is.
That's something y'all want to do?
Yes.
I move that we approve this
Wait, we
signage.
have.
Oh,
she
sorry.
has a question. Go ahead.
Thank you. The second one, the young adult collection houses materials intended for ages ranging from 13 to 18. It says within this age range, the content in the books may vary greatly. I don't think that really tells the parents anything that might be in that collection that might not be appropriate. I mean,
I think the second part kind of clears that up.
And I think when you say content, that sets off about to most parents. If you say
it doesn't to me, and I am a parent.
I'm okay with, would you want to add a sentence saying something like,
This area might, I don't know.
there may be something that you.
There might be vulgar material,
I
there
wouldn't
might
wanna
be
say
something
that.
in here.
I wouldn't want to say that, but how about something
I
that you
mean-
might not find appropriate for your child?
Yes, something like that.
And that's
It
in the
does-
second part.
The last sentence says that.
It says, please ask for assistance from a librarian if you're unsure which items will best match your child's reading habits and sensibilities.
That doesn't tell me that.
Well, but it is, it is saying your child's reading habits and sensibilities as opposed to what you as a parent might want your child to read.
I mean, if I'm with my child.
You or your child.
Yeah, you
Let
can
me
say
read it,
you.
say that.
I'd be happier with that, you or your child.
Yep,
Or do you want you or your child?
you or your
The
child.
last
sentence.
Second to last sentence.
Match your child, you or your child's reading habits and sense, okay, I got you.
Well, that way there's, you have parents' involvement in it too, not just the child. I do understand what you're saying, but it does get lengthy the more we put in there. I'm not opposed to adding a sentence about, I don't want to use the word vulgar, but if you don't as a parent, you might, something about maybe using the word appropriate.
To kind
or
of just give an
something
alert to a parent
like
that there might be some subject matters, not that, I mean, I might not want them reading birds, you know what I mean? Like, there just may be some subject matters in this area that, to make the parent more aware, to be more, since we are letting them, they are supposed to parent, right? So give them the information so they can parent.
I think that's sort of the intention of having the sign.
That's
to
right.
begin with.
Obviously, if you see a sign, you're like, oh, yeah, there might be something I don't want my kids to read. I mean,
Just for the
sometimes we have.
record, I am a mom, and this sign would not tell me that there's something in there I might not like, just for the record.
Okay, I don't really want to say that for most people, all right, I'm not going to say anything else. I think just the word content, that's used in everything, that tells people, that sets off a warning bell for most people. We're not ever going to be able to make every parent understand that there are things in the library they might not want to read. We would have umpteen signs, as many signs as we have books. So, I think that says it all. Just by changing match your yours or your child's reading habits and sensibilities. And sensibilities is another word that puts out there that's something that you want to be sensitive about. I feel.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would have any trouble understanding what this meant, to be honest with you.
Well, and again, this is, like you said, it's an experiment, so we'll put these signs out. And
Yeah.
if we have parents who say, I'm not really sure what you mean by this, then we can change it.
Right. But we are doing something, we're being proactive, so.
The key phrase is, please ask for assistance from
Right.
the librarian.
So if you're not sure.
If you're unsure.
Okay. Okay.
I think that covers it.
But if we, library staff find that, that parents are like, what does this mean, then we could come back and change the wording.
Yeah, we can definitely get feedback. I would just we'd have to word it carefully, so there's no negative connotation. Like, you don't want to say warning, we just have to be careful about how we want it to be informational, not
confrontational.
Yeah.
I just pinned something in, it says within this age range, the content in books may not be suitable to some parents.
We took out suitable because Elisa didn't like that
We
word.
talked we had that phrase last week, or
I
last
would rather
month.
have
Yeah.
suitable than what is right now.
Yeah.
That's the only word we changed because you made that suggestion to take suitable out.
Let's say appropriate.
Well,
What's appropriate for some is not appropriate for
right.
others. So.
We're trying to encompass the whole of the.
So you want a motion?
We will take feedback and communicate that and.
That's what I was thinking, what Karen said. It says ask for assistance from your librarian, and if you hear that the librarians in that area, this section, are having a lot of misunderstanding, then come back to us and let us know that.
And if you could give us feedback from parents, I think that then we could say, yes, this is working, or no, we're not clear enough, and then we can make changes. Okay.
Well, I make a motion that we accept this signage
With the,
with the one edit, you or
Your child.
added.
do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. All right, we'll try the signage, and like I said, if it doesn't work.
We can change it.
Okay, it is 8:15. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Not so bad.
Second, all those in favor?
Second.
Meeting adjourned.